of referencing God as the prerequisite or precondition of all facts?
I don't
Yeah,
think
okay,
that
hold on a second. Okay, Grobes, you have trolled before. You're now banned again, okay? You want to troll again, you're banned. Okay. Yeah, dude, listen to me. Either you're a pathological liar, right? Or you're truly a delusional individual. You clearly are. You were banned in here before. Okay. See, there you go again. When you say get your panties in a bunch, bro. Okay. See, you're a troll. Okay. So I'm gonna type the code now. You're not gonna be banned in here. Okay. Any last words before I ban your rear end, you little
Try to be a better person.
By the way, he was not banned because he was disagreeing. He's being banned because he's a troll. I welcome disagreement. It makes for good conversation, but he's a troll and he's an idiot. Okay, so either you affirm God exists, and if you refuse to affirm God exists, then you will deny that God exists either directly or indirectly. So will you affirm the existence of God?
I don't think that God is like one being, I guess. I
Okay.
don't think it's like
That's not an answer to my question. Will you assert the existence of God? That God is the creator and sustainer of creation? That God is eternal, absolute? Okay. Senri, what you want to repeat that, please?
I said, because I see you asking questions repeatedly, and I see people just like responding but not responding, you know? So I think you just gotta clarify. It's like a yes or no question, because when you ask a question,
Yeah.
like,
Well, there's not. When I say, "Will you assert that God exists?" Why does that need clarification?
because you asked her, and I mean, she didn't respond the way.
That's not my problem. That's not my problem. Isabella, will you assert that Donald Trump is the president of the United States?
no,
Why not?
because he is.
Okay, yeah, okay. I'm gonna stop the conversation right now. You're ill-equipped to carry on this conversation.
Yo, Darth, can I ask you something?
Not the same as denial.
Sure. Hold on a second. What's that, Sanri?
Failing to affirm is not the same as denial.
That's not me, by the way. What the fuck?
You're making a category error, Snarl. Okay. When we refuse to affirm God, which is the ultimate, then the refusal to affirm is a de facto denial because of the category that God is in. If we're talking about an entity or state of affairs that's in a different category, then you can be neutral toward that. You are making the typical error that most unbelievers make because you're unfamiliar with the category that God is in. You are conceiving of God as being a supreme being, but not being ultimate, the ground of all being. Okay, so do you understand what I just said?
I understand that you're defining God in such a way that he must exist.
No, that's not what I did at all. Okay, so you're not even understanding what I'm saying. Okay, I said the reason why you are thinking that way is because you are conceiving or defining God as though he may be the supreme being, but that he is not ultimate. One could be a supreme being, but also be a creature. Now, if one is ultimate, they would also, by definition, be supreme. But ultimacy means that all possibility and impossibility are derived and sustained by that ultimacy. Whereas a supreme being could simply be the most powerful, but still derivative and dependent. You could be neutral towards such a concept of God. But when we're talking about God in these types of conversations, we're talking about the creator-creation distinction, where God is ultimate, absolute, and all of creation is what God has instituted and secured in terms of possibility and impossibility. Now, God being defined in that manner, one cannot be neutral toward God being absolute and ultimate.
That's just a raw assertion.
You're not.
Of course, you can be neutral.
No, okay, listen, I've had problems with you before yesterday. Okay, if you're going to troll, right, you're going to be removed from the room because I don't tolerate trolling. Now, let me explain something to you, right? Do you accept that in order to have actuality and intelligibility for temporal facts, that they're going to need an ultimate context?
Not necessarily.
Okay, then you don't know what the hell you're talking. How old are you?
What difference does it make? How old are you?
If you, I'm in my late 50s. It makes a difference. I want to know the age of the person I'm dealing with because sometimes I deal with dumb teenagers. Are you a teenager?
I'm in my mid-30s.
Okay, good. Well, then you're reasoning like a teenager. Okay, so this doesn't bode well for you. Okay, now you cannot have entities or states of affairs that are of a second order without there being a first order or something that is primary. Okay?
I mean, I believe the material world is primary.
Okay. So you are agreeing then that reality necessitates that there's something that's metaphysically primary.
I don't think materialism is necessarily a form of
You're not addressing my question.
metaphysics.
You have a habit of not addressing my question. Now,
You have a habit of not defining your terms.
Okay, listen to me. Listen, you're getting closer to being not only ejected but banned. Okay,
it's not a threat, dude. I mean, talk to me if you want.
No. This is just the rules that the room operates from. Okay. Now, I've dealt with you before. Okay. I don't mind people disagreeing with me, but I do mind when people are trolling while pretending to intellectually disagree. Now, either you accept that there is a reason why everything at all exists, or you don't, and that is what is ultimate, and that
I don't have to pretend to know what that reason is.
Don't fucking overtalk me. Overtalk me again and see what happens. All right? I already know that you're a troll, so do it again. Now, you cannot coherently and intelligibly believe that all particulars that are independent of each other are ultimate. That would not be coherent. There has to be something that is singularly ultimate, that provides for the instantiation of and the sustaining of all things that are possible and impossible. Because if you have a plurality of entities, two or more, then they both could not be ultimate. You can only have one thing that is ultimate. Because if you attempt to designate that there are two or more eternal entities that are ultimate, then they would be independent of each other and they would exist for different reasons. So there would therefore not be something that is singularly ultimate. So neither one of them is singularly ultimate. Okay. So matter is what your view is, that matter is what is ultimate. Is that correct?
I think it's a perfectly fine hypothesis.
Okay. I didn't ask you for a hypothesis. What is it in your worldview that is ultimate, that institutes and secures all possibility and impossibility?
I'm not required to have an opinion on what is ultimate.
Listen to me. Answer the question or you're going to be gone. Okay? Do you accept that what is ultimate, what institutes and secures all possibility and impossibility, do you believe and accept that it is a personal, ultimate God?
No.
Good. What then it is? So when you do you possess the capacity at all to speak facts that are actual and intelligible?
I mean, that's up for debate.
Okay. Bye-bye. Another troll, folks.
Wait, Darth, you know Isabella, you remember you asked her the question about Donald Trump?
Yeah.
There was a mistranslation. I think she doesn't understand English very well. She was saying in chat that she meant, she thought that affirm meant like the opposite, you know? So that's what she,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Just
Yeah.
to point that out.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. So if I say to you, will you assert that God is the necessary prerequisite to all facts? I'm not asking you what you believe or no. I said, will you assert it? Okay.
That God is the creator of what?
Yeah. Will you assert that God is that which is ultimate, absolute, and the creator of all things that begin to exist? Will you assert that?
Like the Christian God?
Okay. Well, right now I'm just using just God generically. Will you assert that? Because I'm trying to address your atheism. We can get to that in a bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you seem to be confused about your atheism, right? So
Yeah.
will you assert that God is what is ultimate, personal, and agent, who is the creator and sustainer of creation? Okay. Will you assert that?
Yeah.
No, I mean, if you say no, I mean, you're not. I'm not going to be upset. It's just whatever
Well,
you're willing to assert.
well, I don't think that we're like the ultimate. Like, I think there's something above us, but I just don't know what it is.
Okay, so you are unwilling to assert the necessity of God as the precondition of all facts, right? You're unwilling to assert that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you're unwilling to assert that, some people think that you're just being neutral. Well, you can't be neutral toward God, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're unwilling to assert the necessity of referencing the necessity of God, then your position entails that facts are standalone without reference to the necessity of God. In other words, you are without referencing God. So in other words, you can invoke facts that they can exist and they can be intelligible in your frame of reference without the necessity of referencing God. That's what your position is. That's what, many atheist position is, including agnostics. Well, such a position entails, upon examination, the indirect and implicit denial of God. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter that somebody says, but I'm not asserting God doesn't exist. You don't have to publicly assert that God doesn't exist in order to deny God. All you have to do is, in one form or another, say that facts can be invoked as actual and intelligible without referencing the necessity of God. So, see, in a world where God is, every single fact would necessitate referencing the necessity of God, because all facts would derive from God. Now, in a world where God is not, then whereas something else conceptually would be ultimate, then facts would be without the necessity of referencing God as the necessary precondition. So the mistake that people make is that they think, both atheists and agnostics, that they can just say, well, I don't have a belief in God, but I don't deny God. That's right. You don't deny God explicitly, but your position implicitly and indirectly is a denial of the necessity of referencing God.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you refuse to assert the necessity of referencing the necessity of God for facts, then you deny the existence of God by invoking facts, deliberately so, without referencing the necessity of God. So it's an indirect denial.
Yeah.
You see, modern day atheists within the last generation or so have completely flipped on the historical meaning of atheism, that there is no God, because they realize that they cannot defend it. And because they cannot defend the falsity of God, they want to reformulate atheism as simply an autobiographical statement of their own personal psychology. Right?
Yeah.
Just saying, oh, I lack belief in God. Now, I had a young atheist in here, it was either yesterday or the day before, and that was what he was trying to, put forth. And in the beginning of the conversation, I said to him, is theism true? And he said, no. I said, okay. And as the conversation progressed, I asked him, okay, is your atheism the denial of God, or is your atheism a statement of that you are absent of positive belief in the falsity of God? He said, yeah, that's it. I said, so your atheism would be true. It's an autobiographical statement that you are without a belief in God. He said, it's right. I said, but do you realize the problem there is because then if atheism is an autobiographical statement about your mental state, and it would be true, then theism would be an autobiographical statement and also true. So under that way of defining atheism, both atheism and theism would be true. That's not coherent. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So what atheists are attempting to do is they're attempting to smuggle in what is classically known as agnosticism, right? Because they don't have the courage to assert and defend the falsity of God. And they want to hide behind a barrage of words and rhetoric and semantical games, semantical gymnastics, but it's easy to show it's gobbledygook. And they'll say, this is what they will say, because they've read this crap on the internet. They'll say, oh, well, atheism has to do with belief, not about knowledge. Agnosticism has to do with knowledge. Well, I'm sorry. I can read you a direct quote from T.H. Huxley, who coined the term agnosticism, that when he invented the term, it was to cover all forms of belief, including the subset of belief known as knowledge. Right? Mm-hmm. So atheists, for the most part on the internet, are notoriously poor thinkers. Right?
Yeah.
And you will find that many professional philosophers who are atheists will agree with my position and other people's position that it's downright stupid and foolish to define atheism as a lack of belief, because we have a perfectly good word for the mental state where somebody is absent of belief in God, and that's called agnosticism.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And when they say, oh no, atheism is I just don't have a belief in God, I'm not asserting that God doesn't exist. And then I respond to them by saying, well, can you give me a singular word that designates the denial or the falsity of God? And then there's dead silence, because they know what the word is. Can anyone tell me what that word is that designates the falsity of God? Bueller? What's the word, folks?
Atheism.
There you go. But they don't want to admit it, because they want their cake and want to eat it too. They want atheism to mean the denial of God, but when they're pressed on defending what they really believe and what they intend, they go, oh, my atheism is a lack of belief. But it's easy to show through a couple of questions that they really don't lack belief in God. They deny God, because in their heart of hearts, they do not believe that God is necessary to be invoked or referenced for the actuality and intelligibility of facts. And if you believe that God is not necessary to be invoked or referenced for facts, then you deny God. So there's only two positions on the existence of God. Those who assert and affirm the existence of God, and those who deny God either directly or indirectly. And an indirect denial of God is every much as true as a direct denial of God. And they desperately fight this because they don't have the courage, or they think that they don't have the intellectual ability to defend the falsity of God. Right?
Yeah.
So do you understand now? So there's no neutrality toward God. Once you understand that God is in a unique category unlike anything else, meaning that which is absolute, ultimate, the ground of all being, and if you withhold affirmation or belief in that as being ultimate, then whatever you say thereafter, its actuality and intelligibility will derive from whatever you conceive as ultimate that is not God.
So how is it the case that God does not exist?
Yeah, well, she's confused. So I'm trying to unpack to her. Notoriety invited her to come in and speak with me. So she's a little bit confused about these issues. So I'm trying to unpack this for her. So either one will assert that God is, or one will deny God either directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
Okay?
That makes sense.
Yeah. But you see, people desperately want to have a fuzzy ground. And because, there's a bit of truth in this that, there's a whole array of topics that we can be neutral about, that we can not have a positive belief in without denying it. For example, right now, I do not have a belief that there are 50-pound chunks of gold on the surface of Mars. But I'm not denying it.
Yeah.
Right? But it's because there's no metaphysical relationship of dependency of myself in the case that there is or isn't a chunk of gold on Mars. But when it comes to God being the ground of all being, either I am derivative and depend upon God for my existence, or I am without dependence upon God, which means God would not exist. See, once you understand that when we're talking about God, we're talking about the creator-creation distinction, the creator-creature distinction. A lot of atheists want to think and conceive about God as though God were this unimaginably powerful, unembodied mind or persona that is the superintendent of the universe, and that he would be supreme over all other entities. But you could be supreme without being ultimate. You could be the supreme creature, but you would still be derivational and dependent on what is ultimate. And you could be neutral toward such an entity, right? Suppose somebody said, there's this unembodied, incredibly knowledgeable and powerful mind that is the cosmic policeman of the universe. You could be neutral about that, right? And I wouldn't dispute that. But when we talk about God proper, okay, as creator, where God is eternal, ultimate, and absolute, that you cannot be neutral about. And many atheists will fight tooth and nail not to concede the truth that they are, in fact, not neutral toward God. Okay? So do you realize that you've got to adopt a position? Either you're going to affirm and assert that God is, or you will affirm and assert that God is not.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if somebody says to me, oh, well, you're shifting the burden of proof. No, there's only a shifting of the burden of proof is if there is true grounds for neutrality, but there isn't. So somebody says, well, I don't have a good reason to believe in God. Well, yeah, I'll give you a good reason. It's because if you do not accept that all of creation, all of the facts around you, that God has designed the entire universe to let us know that he is creator and that he exists, then we could not be rational beings. We couldn't have rational apprehension of the world around us. So because we do have rational acquisition and apprehension of facts around us, then God exists. And somebody might say, well, that's just an assertion. Say, yeah, and that's just a veiled denial. So if you don't accept that us being rational beings is all the evidence that you need that there is a God, okay, then explain how you can be a rational, personal being in a world which is simply an atmosphere of chance, where there is no personal creator God who is sovereign and providential and who has endowed and imbued us with rationality. How then could we be rational beings? And making an appeal to evolution is just begging the question. There are even atheist philosophers like Daniel Dennett who says if materialism is true, then minds do not exist. And if minds do not exist, there's no rationality. So even some smart atheist philosophers recognize this. So if anybody rejects the line of reasoning, the recognition that they are a personal, rational being that has rational apprehension and acquisition of facts around them, and that therefore that necessitates that what is ultimate is a personal agent and has imbued us with that, then they're going to have to make a case for how they can be, how rationality, them being a rational person, exists in a God-free world, in a world where anything goes, anything can happen. It's a chance world.
Darth.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember our discussion last night. That was
you got kicked it because you're an uneducated teenager and you didn't know what you were talking about and you were argumentative.
Okay, so I think I've identified where I would disagree with you. So I think that the problem with your argument is that your argument is equivocating between two different definitions of depending. The first definition that you give is a causal definition, and the other definition is a definition about necessity. If God exists, then everything depends.
Whoa, slow down.
Wait, can I just interject real quick? Omni, did you say that you're referring the question or whatever drama you had with him yesterday? So you spent the whole day yesterday and today just thinking about that?
No, I did other things yesterday and today.
Okay, so let's go back to square one, okay? Okay. Are you an atheist?
It'll depend on what you mean by atheist.
However you define atheism, are you an atheist?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in your understanding of atheism, does your atheism constitute the assertion of the existence of God, the denial of the existence of God, or does your atheism constitute a state of neutrality?
I think atheism constitutes that there is not a persuasive reason to believe that there is a God.
That's not an answer to my question. I will repeat the question again. Is your atheism, does it constitute the assertion that there is an absolute, ultimate creator God? Or is atheism the denial that there is a creator God? Or thirdly, is your atheism, does it constitute a state of neutrality?
I think that that's a false dichotomy, or I guess trichotomy.
Why is it false? What's the fourth option?
Well, the fourth option is saying that there is that there is not a good reason to believe in a God, and therefore
then you would be neutral.
I would be neutral.
Hold on a second. I don't have a good reason. I don't have a good reason to assert the actuality of 25-pound boulders of gold on Mars, and I don't have a good reason that they're not there. So I'm neutral.
Okay, sure. Under that definition of neutral.
So the point is, your conceptualization of atheism will either be the assertion of the existence of God, or secondly, the denial of the existence of God, or thirdly, your atheism constitutes neutrality toward the existence of God.
Okay, I would say under that definition, the neutrality towards the existence of God.
Right. Okay. Now, unfortunately, this is a colossal misconception. Okay. Now, you can be neutral toward many things. Do you think that you can be neutral toward all concepts?
I'm not sure if by your question you mean, like, can you be neutral?
Can you be neutral about everything?
I mean, like,
it's not a trick question. Can you be neutral about all proposed states of affairs?
No, I think we have good reason not to be neutral about certain things.
Okay. That's not an answer to my question. Can you be neutral toward all proposed states of affairs?
No.
No. So you agree with me that there are many things that we can be neutral about, but that there are some things that we cannot be neutral. Okay? Now, if we're going to talk about God, we have to be talking about the same entity. Okay? Now, when I talk about God, I'm referring to that which is absolute and ultimate, eternal, unconditionally non-dependent, and the creator and sustainer of all things that begin to exist. So we could encapsulate what I have just saying is that God is what is ultimate and personal. Now, is that definition acceptable to you?
Ultimate and personal.
That God is ultimate and personal, meaning he has a mind and a will and emotions.
Yeah.
That what is ultimate is an agent.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that acceptable to you?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when we talk about what is ultimate, that's a very narrow and unique category. We either have what is ultimate, or we have everything else that is temporal and not ultimate or derivational or dependent. Now, either in your model of reality, when you invoke facts, facts will either derive and depend on what is ultimate and is personal, or your facts will derive from what is ultimate and impersonal. There's not a third category of non-ultimacy. Okay, are we clear?
Yeah.
All right. So if you come along and you say to me, well, I don't have a belief, I will not assert the actuality of a personal, absolute, or ultimacy God. And you think, but I'm not denying it. Well, can we deny things indirectly?
Yeah.
Right. So if somebody says, but I'm not denying that God doesn't exist. But if you say, if you are unwilling to assert the necessity of referencing God as the necessary prerequisite or precondition to all facts, then you are simply saying is that there are one or more facts that exist without the necessity of God. If your position entails that one or more facts exist without the necessity of God, you have denied the existence of God, whether you realize it or not. So I will ask you a very simple question. Since you now agree that the denial can be direct or indirect, I'm going to ask you a simple question. Will you assert the necessity of referencing the necessity of God as the prerequisite to all facts?
Depends on what we mean by necessity. If necessity...
No, necessity means that all facts derive and depend on X, and X is God. Now, here's the question. Will you assert right now the necessity of referencing the necessity of God?
No.
Okay. Since you refuse to assert the necessity of referencing the necessity of God, then you are making an implicit, indirect counterclaim that one or more facts exist without the necessity of God. And if your position entails that one or more facts exist without the necessity of God, you have denied the existence of God by implication and indirectly. It necessarily follows. Now, you may object to that because you realize that you cannot defend the falsity of God. But that's not my problem. My problem is that if you are unwilling to assert the necessity of God as the prerequisite of all facts, then you deny the necessity of God indirectly.
I don't agree that that's true, and the reason why I don't agree that that's true is I think that you're equivocating between two different definitions of necessity. In one case, the definition of necessity that you're using is you're using it to mean caused by. So if God exists, then everything...
No. I'm using the word necessity to mean the ground of all existence, both chronologically and contemporarily. Okay? So the necessity of God as the prerequisite of facts doesn't simply mean chronologically, although that's included. It includes that it's contemporary as well. So if God is not necessitated for all facts, whether you look at it from the angle of chronologically or contemporarily, okay? God being ultimate, okay, if God is ultimate, then if a fact begins to exist, it could only exist in virtue of its relationship to what is ultimate. So there's no equivocation going on here. You desperately do not want to admit what you really believe, which is the falsity of God, because you know you cannot defend that. Can you defend right now the falsity of God?
I can defend the falsity of any
Can
individual.
you defend the falsity of God?
With any God, I can defend their falsity.
Can you defend the falsity of God as we have defined it in this conversation?
No.
Okay. And I'm correct. That is your motivated reasoning to define your atheism as an autobiographical statement. Do you remember yesterday when I asked you, is theism true? And you said no. But then you told me that atheism is true. Is atheism an autobiographical statement?
No.
Oh, so atheism is not a lack of belief in God?
I think atheism is not a lack of belief in God. I think atheism is the proposition that it's not rational to believe in God.
Okay, all right, listen, you're too dim-witted to carry on this conversation further, okay? All right, you're just ill-equipped. If you say, I don't have a good reason to believe in God, then you lack belief. If I say, I don't have a good reason to believe that there are 25-pound boulders of gold on Mars, right? Then then by definition, I lack belief in 25-pound boulders of gold on Mars.